Today I want to talk a little bit about the passage in Mark 5. It is 22 to 34. We're going to break it down into a few different segments. But I've been really reflecting on the bleeding woman, especially as I take my own journey in my health and get back doctor reports that are saying, you're fine, nothing's wrong, you're okay. And I'm like, no, something's just not right. Like, my body is telling me something's not right. And having to do my own research, having to say, you know what, I get it, okay, the big things are fine, great, but something is noticeably off in me, and I know it. I know I don't feel myself. I don't feel like I'm operating at my best. I don't feel just relaxed like I normally am. I feel a little bit more on edge, a little bit more irritable, more easily irritated. And that's just not my personality. So I've been doing a lot of digging and a lot of research, and I've been really learning about how dysregulated the nervous system can get and how that contributes to a wide variety of symptoms that a doctor can't necessarily diagnose in his office because it's not something that's coming from a heart or from a brain or from an organ or a disease. There's a root system that a doctor can't see, but God sees. And he knows how to get to the root cause of. So I've been working on that, looking at, okay, how do I heal my nervous system? And how do I get to the most optimal place in my life where I can serve God with abandonment, where I can be like, God, whatever you want. I'm surrendered. I'm available. Like, I don't want to be held back by a day that I don't feel like myself, or by a day that I don't feel like doing anything, or by a day where I have low energy or my stamina is not just there. I don't want to be held back by that, God. And so I feel that point of desperation that's like, God, whatever it takes, I want your healing. I want what you have for me. I don't want to live in a place of survival. I want to thrive from all of my experiences, from all of my circumstances. I want to be who you've called me to be. And I don't want to settle until I am on top of the mountain declaring, I am victorious. Because there is one who died for me, who knows my body, who knows the inside and outside of my entire being. He has never left me. He has never forsaken me. He knows me in every little intimate part that belongs in me as part of his design for me. So how do I use it? How do I utilize it? How do I go after these things of God when my body is kind of doing a rebuttal against it? And I just have reflected on this woman this bleeding woman, that she was desperate. She had been bleeding for 12 years, a castaway in her city, someone who you did not touch, you did not look at because she was unclean. 12 years, she went to doctors, she went to all the health people she could go to get an answer, and nobody could give her an answer. She was bleeding to death. How many people around us are bleeding to death? Bleeding to death from a heart wound, bleeding to death from an emotional wound, bleeding to death from a mental wound, bleeding to death from a trauma they've experienced, bleeding to death slowly. Years and years take their toll. And until we get to that point of desperation when we're just like, God, just one touch. Even if it's just the tassel off of your son's garment, just one touch. I only need enough strength and enough stamina to reach out for one touch from my Savior, so the healing, cleansing flood of his blood can run through my very being, run through my veins, run through my nerves, run through my muscles and my bones, and tell them, awaken, awaken, daughter of the King. You awake because you have been called and you have been set apart. And this is just an opportunity for growth. This season will not define you. This season will not hold you back. This season will not confine you. This season is an opportunity for growth, an opportunity to get some things straight, to understand how your body works, to really redefine how you will operate in stressful situations, stressful events. When stress arises, how will you respond to it in body, soul, and spirit? So here I am in this place where it's like, God, I'm the bleeding woman. I have for so many years taken care of so many other people. And that's so natural. It's so natural to just take care of them and forsake myself. But even on an airplane, when they teach you about if an emergency happens, what do? You put your your mask on first, your oxygen mask, because if you don't breathe in oxygen, if you don't get that fresh air and your lungs don't fill up, at some point you won't be breathing to help others. So right now, if you are in a place of desperation and you're wondering how will things ever change, you need to put your oxygen mask on. Whatever it takes. If it's a wounded heart, go to a counselor you can trust. If it's an emotional wound that you need healing for, if it's a physical thing, don't keep going in survival mode. God's got something more for you, but you have to establish today that you are worth fighting for. Put on your oxygen mask and live and breathe the breath of God through your lungs so you can breathe and help others. Develop a new posture before the Lord as you become available to His purpose, surrendered to maybe this painful experience so that the purpose beyond it can be a purpose that He utilizes through your life. Don't give up. You will overcome this. You will be greater than your circumstances. One day you will stand on the mountain and say, I was victorious. But it won't be because you succumbed to the circumstances. It won't be because you gave in and said, okay, this is just my life, I'll just survive it. It will be because you chose to thrive. You chose to see God at His word and say, I will choose to live in the land of the living because God is able. He can do the impossible. My Jehovah Rapha lives. He is my healer. He is my Jehovah Jireh, my provider. My Jehovah Nisi, my banner. This is my God. He is a personal God. He cares for me. And He has given me this moment in time to place on my oxygen mask, to breathe the fresh air, and to reset what has been offset. Because He wants to do more, abundantly more than all I could hope or imagine. I did plan to get into this passage, but we're going to dig into this tomorrow a little bit. We'll start today by just the dichotomy of two people who are approaching Jesus, one from the highest position and one from the lowest position. And Jesus, in who He is, relates to both of them on a personal level, never treating them from their circumstances, never treating them from what society might say about them or who they've been defined to be by their circumstances, but looking them in the eyes and being the Savior that they both desperately needed. The first one was Jairus. It says, then one of the rulers of the synagogue came up, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he prostrated himself at his feet and begged him earnestly, saying, my little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be healed and live. And Jesus went with him, and a great crowd kept following him and pressed him from all sides so as almost to suffocate him. So there's this point where Jairus is like, my daughter is sick and dying, and I know that you have the power to heal her. I know that you can come, and in a moment, in a word, in a touch, you could revive her soul and her spirit, and she could breathe new life again. I need you to come. In my desperation, I can't find anybody else who can do what you can do, Jesus. I need you to come. And Jesus listens, and He starts out to go towards Jairus' house and says that He is going to go to this little girl whose father is in a desperate place. Jesus, you need to do something. And Jesus knows He will do something. But along the way, there's going to be this interruption. An interruption that is going to hold back the healing process for this little girl. An interruption and a disruption that looks like the ending of her life from the perspective of the people. But Jesus sees all. He knows all. And there's no disruption or interruption from the things that He wants to do in your life. If you are at a point of desperation, I urge you, reach out to the Savior. Reach out to the one who sees you, who knows you, who loves you, who has never lost track of you. He wants to do something in you today. Today is the day of salvation. Make your heart come alive by putting your heart in the hands of a Savior who knows you intimately and who has great plans for you. Tomorrow, let's discover what this bleeding woman did and how Jesus responded to her.